So you heard a lot about Take Charge. What Take Charge is it's a regional effort to plan for electric vehicles in the Sacramento six-county region. And it's not only planning the infrastructure, so when and where and how many and what type of chargers we're going to put around the region, but it's a lot about the readiness side as well, is what can we do as a region, what can happen at the local level to make sure that our region is ready for electric vehicles. And so while I work at SACOG, this is not a SACOG effort. It's a regional collaboration and partnership between everybody that you see up here, Greenwise Joint Venture, Air Districts, utilities, Valley Vision, SACOG. We're just one small part of it, of this larger effort. What this plan or what this project is really trying to do, as I said, is get ourselves PEV ready. And why we want to get PEV ready is really two things. One, we just want to make sure that we're supporting these vehicles because we're seeing a lot more of them on the road, and I'll have some numbers up here to highlight that. But we really want to start to position ourselves and set ourselves up for more state and federal dollars that are going to be coming available. We've actually just applied to an Energy Commission grant right now to provide some DC fast charging in particular areas. So we're continuing to just move the ball forward a little bit and setting ourselves up to have more and more infrastructure. And as the plan goes on, we're going to continue to monitor it to see what kind of vehicles are out there, what changes in the vehicle technology and the chargers themselves are happening, where are chargers going, how are driving behaviors changing, and continue to monitor this plan and make refreshments to that plan as we can. Before I get too deep into it, I want to give a little bit of context about what are electric vehicles and what kind of things you can expect out of them. For a lot of you, this is probably old hat, so just continue eating. Typically, there are two types of electric vehicles out there in really high level. The first is a plug-in hybrid electric, so it differs from a hybrid in and of itself, is that it has an electric engine that you actually need to plug into the wall in order to fuel. You typically get about 100 miles per range, and you can get 60 miles per equivalent gallon. And then the other one is a full battery electric vehicle. So this is one that relies solely on the battery itself and does not have any gas engine to back up. And it can get about 100 miles per range. Obviously, these are averages. You can get some that are a lot more. You can get some that are a lot less. In order to actually fuel and move these cars forward a little bit, you need to charge them, and there's three typical levels of charging. Level 1 outlet is much what you're going to see on the wall in here. It's just a 110 outlet that you would plug to charge your cell phone in. It takes a little bit longer to charge that vehicle, and you're going to get a lower mile range per an hour of charging. Next, you move up to level 2. It's like a 240 volt outlet. It's what you'd plug your dryer into. Obviously, you're putting more electricity in there, so you're going to get more charge. So it's going to take about 6 hours on average to charge this vehicle, and you're getting, and we've heard some debate about this, 26 miles per hour. I think that depends on the type of vehicle also that you're charging. And the last one is a DC fast charger. It's a direct connect, and it's plugging right into the source. And this one, you're getting about an 80% charge in roughly 30 minutes. So you're almost fully charging the vehicle and getting it up to speed. One of the big differences on these is not only how long it takes to charge the car, but the cost. So you can see we've got some representative dollar signs up there. So most level 1 you're going to see at the home, maybe a place of work. Level 2 you're starting to see at work and maybe out in the public, and then DC fast charger is going to be a lot of the public level charging that you see. Some people might say, well, are EVs really that big? Are we really going to see that many out there on the road? Yes, I believe you're going to, which is why I agreed to do this project. In the first 2 years alone of EVs being on the market, and they really came into the market strong in about 2010, they're outpacing hybrids in their first 2 years on the market. So if this trend continues, we're going to see a lot more on the road. What we have up here are two graphs representing sales on the left in the state of California since 2010, and on the right is the Sacramento region, so the 6 counties in sales since 2010. And one caveat, this data is actually based on people that have received rebates from the state of California. So you can see that the trend between the two is very similar. The peaks and the valleys are happening at about the same time. But I think the main thing to see out of this is that it's an upward projection. So we're forecasting that this trend is going to continue. Yes, it's going to have the peaks and valleys, but mostly it's going to continue. And one thing I do want to point out in here is that you start to see these little spikes happening right towards the end of the year. A lot of that is because people are just hurrying putting their paperwork in for rebates before the end of the tax year. But once again, the main idea and the main point to make on this is that projection is ever upward. So what does this mean? I know it's hard to look at a graph, how many electric vehicles we actually have in our region. So I pulled the numbers out this morning on what kind of vehicles we're actually seeing. This number is probably a little bit low because once again, this is who's claimed a rebate, but it's just a little bit over 2,000 vehicles in our 6-county region right now. You can see the distribution. I think it makes pretty good sense. The one thing I wanted to point out is the little numbers down in the bottom. 2/3 of these 2,000 vehicles have been sold in the last 12 months, and almost half of them have been sold in the last 7 months. So you can see that projection and that forecast is really taking off, and we're going to start to see, I think, a lot more of these vehicles coming on the road, even in the next 6 to 12 months. So that 2,000 number is going to grow pretty steadily. So quiz time. You thought you were going to get off easily, but we're going to do a quiz tonight. So the question is, what county in the SACOG region has the most PEVs per capita? And I gave a hint down there that SACOG is El Dorado, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba. I had Placer, Yuba, Yolo. I haven't even heard the right answer yet. It was a surprise. It was El Dorado County. El Dorado County came in at 1.32 electric vehicles per 1,000 people. There you go. Well, so I put this slide up next to maybe kind of help answer why that might be, and a lot of it is demographics. So this is one thing that SACOG started to look at is who is actually driving an electric vehicle now? What makes up an electric vehicle driver? And you can start to see the numbers. I'll call it a few. It's high education attainment, high ownership, as well as high income. So you kind of start to look at some of these demographics. It might start to make a little bit more sense. So what we did is we took a lot of these demographics. We looked at where they're existing in the region right now. As the Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization, we have forecasts going out to 2035 on demographic variables. So we looked around our region to say, okay, where are these demographics going to exist in the future? We did a little bit of research with UC Davis on how is that demographic variable going to change in the future. One, as more vehicles come on the road. Two, as the initial price starts to get lower. And three, as you start to get the second life of a lot of these electric vehicles. They looked at the Toyota Prius to say, okay, initially the Toyota Prius also kind of had a high capital cost, but as you started to get used vehicles out there, leases started to expire, things like that, you had a new demographic out there that was able to purchase that. So it expanded the market a little bit. So we looked at all of this and we forecasted that we would have about 75,000 vehicles on our region's roads by 2025. And this just happened to coincide pretty well with the governor's zero-emission vehicle goals as well. He wanted to have 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2025, and this is roughly our percentage of that if we take a percentage of the population. Once again, in order to get all these cars out there, to get them moving around, we need to charge them. So what does this mean? Well, the first thing that SACOG did was we looked at the driving pattern, and it has a really big influence on the type and the location of charger that you're going to put out there. So you can see that this electric vehicles get 70 miles plus per charge, a full charge, and that's going to depend how you use the car as well. So your car is sitting typically about 12 hours at home, where you can see a lot of charging, and then you might drive to work or school or somewhere else like that. You might spend about 9 hours there, so that's another potential to charge, but that's going to change the type and the level of charging that you're going to do. Also, throughout the day, you're going to take a lot of other little trips. They might be short distance, they might be long distance, but typically you're not spending a lot of time at that. And our research has found it's typically about 30 minutes on these additional stops. So between these three, you start to get a sense of where chargers might go and the level of charging that you might be necessary or needed. Just so you know, right now in our region, the average trip is, or average daily household vehicle miles traveled is 26 miles. So well within the range of every electric vehicle out there. Even if you wanted to go a volt, you could still drive 100% on electricity versus having to go to the gas mileage if you're within that 26 miles. I was talking to Don Saylor earlier, and it's like, that might not work for him. But I think on average in our region, it's maybe a pretty good model to look at. So taking all of these things into consideration, looking at our land use pattern today and what we're forecasting and are estimating in the future, we came up with a profile of what charging might actually look like. And from our perspective, we're seeing a huge increase in home charging. You're spending a lot of time there, you're taking these shorter trips, you might not rely as heavily on charging outside of the home. So we're seeing more charging taking place at home, and we think it's likely going to happen at a lower level, that you're not necessarily going to need some of that higher level charging at home. Once again, this is just our forecast. That number is going to vary. We're going to work with our partners to kind of monitor this, see how it changes, and adjust the numbers accordingly. We also saw a little bit of a decrease in workplace charging compared to what a lot of other regions and a lot of other people are saying. A lot of this is, once again, most of the charging is taking place at home, but we're also looking at the demographics and how people are going to be driving in the future, and therefore we put a little bit more emphasis on the public charging at higher levels, thinking that you're going to get a little bit more throughput on some of those chargers. They're not going to be stranded as much, and two, we just think it's going to allow for more people to charge throughout the day at that higher level. So that's why we de-emphasized workplace charging a little bit and put a little bit more emphasis on public. That's not to say that we're not going to promote workplace charging and that it's not going to be a part of our plan. And as we move into the implementation phase, we're definitely not going to ignore it. It's just that we're thinking that there's going to be more emphasis on home and public than at workplace at this time. So on the left up there is where the existing chargers were at the beginning of this project, which was in 2012. And then what you see on the right is where we're forecasting charging to occur in the region. Obviously, the bigger the pie, the more charging you have, and then the slices represent the various levels. All of this is in this material that you have in front of you as well. The very last thing that I'm going to talk about is PEV readiness. We made a series of presentations to some planning commissions within Sacramento County. We're going to try to take that roadshow out to other planning commissions and maybe start to hit some city council meetings as well. And the idea is, what does it take to actually be PEV ready? So this resolution is just something we're not asking you to sign before you get out, or maybe if you want to test drive the Tesla, maybe we should get you to sign up for some sort of PEV readiness resolution. The idea is more about what can I do at a local level to ensure that my city or my county is going to be PEV ready. So this is just one idea that we could have a resolution to say, yes, we're willing to explore taking these steps to see what is actually necessary. The other thing that SACOG is doing is not only this, but trying to create the resources that are out there. So you have a copy of this. This is our PEV Readiness Best Practices Guide. It outlines a lot of things that you can do at the local level. We've had a few jurisdictions adopt some of these. For example, we have a checklist, electric load calculation worksheet as well that the City of Sacramento and SMUD put together. And through the Take Charge effort, we've made some tweaks to that. And since we've done that, the cities of Citrus Heights, Elk Grove, and Folsom have all adopted this as their front end part of the application process for installing a charger. So SACOG is once again trying to be a resource available to its member jurisdictions to be PEV ready. The other thing we're doing is we have a draft follow-up to this piece that is a roadmap to PEV readiness that is just outlining some of the steps beyond the early stage permit process and early adoption things that you can do, that goes as far to say maybe you can create some local incentives. We have a draft of this, we're vetting it. I've got about 5 or 6 copies today that I would love for you all to take a look at and provide feedback to us. Once we have this available and once we're all pretty comfortable with where it's at, we're going to make this available as well. Right now, this one, as I said, is just in draft. This one is available for print. We also have this available on our website if anyone would like a copy of that.